My name is Patricia. And the night my mother humiliated me in front of 300 wedding guests was the night she accidentally destroyed her favorite daughter. The ballroom was glowing with chandeliers and champagne towers. My sister Emily stood in the center of it all like a queen, perfect white dress, perfect makeup, perfect smile, exactly how my mother liked her. I sat quietly at table 17, that was always my place in the family. Somewhere in the background, for 28 years my mother had one rule: Emily shines, Patricia disappears, and honestly, I was used to it. Emily got the praise, Emily got the money, Emily got the celebrations. I got the polite smile people give when they don't quite remember who you are. But that night something different happened. Halfway through the reception, my mother stood up, crystal glass raised high, her voice loud enough to cut through the music. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" 300 heads turned toward her. She smiled the way she always did when she was about to say something that would make Emily look perfect. "To my beautiful daughter Emily and her wonderful husband," she said, "tonight is proof that patience and good choices create the perfect life." Applause erupted, then her eyes slowly moved across the room until they landed on me, and suddenly, that warm smile turned into something sharp. "Well," she laughed, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Emily has her fairy tale wedding." She lifted her glass toward my table. "So Patricia, when's your turn?" The room went quiet. A few guests chuckled awkwardly. Someone behind me whispered, "Ouch." My mother loved moments like this. Public jokes. Public reminders that Emily was the success and I was the family disappointment. She expected me to laugh, maybe blush, maybe mumble something self-deprecating, because that's what I had always done before, but something inside me had already snapped earlier that evening. You see, when my mother asked that question, I already knew the truth, a truth that made my hands shake around my champagne glass, because 8 months earlier, I had actually had my turn. There had been invitations, there had been a date, there had even been a dress, but someone had made sure my wedding never happened. And as I slowly stood up from table 17, I realized something. My mother thought she was embarrassing me. She had no idea she had just handed me the microphone to expose what her favorite daughter did to me. So I raised my glass, looked directly at my mother, and said the sentence that made the entire ballroom freeze. "Actually, Mom, my turn was 8 months ago." And that's when Emily's smile finally disappeared. For a second, nobody in that ballroom moved. 300 guests. And suddenly you could hear the quiet clink of forks against plates. My mother blinked, clearly confused. "What are you talking about, Patricia?" she asked with a nervous laugh. But I didn't sit down. For the first time in my life, I stayed standing. 8 months ago, I repeated calmly. "That was my turn." People started whispering now. Emily's perfect smile had frozen in place, but I could see it in her eyes, the panic. She knew exactly what I was about to say. My mother shook her head like she could laugh the moment away. "Oh honey," she said loudly, "you mean that little courthouse thing you were planning? That hardly counts as a real wedding." A few guests chuckled again, but I didn't laugh. Instead, I slowly set my glass on the table. "You're right," I said, "it didn't happen." Now the room was completely silent. Even the band had stopped playing. My mother tilted her head like she had already won. "Well then," she said sweetly, "that answers my question." More uncomfortable laughter, but I kept talking, because someone made sure it didn't. That's when Emily's chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Patricia," she snapped quietly, "this isn't the time." And that right there told everyone something was wrong. People started turning toward her. My mother frowned. "Emily, what is she talking about?" I looked directly at my sister. For 28 years I had watched her take everything: attention, money, praise. But 8 months ago she had taken something else, something she was never supposed to touch. "My wedding invitations were sent out," I said slowly. 300 of them. A few guests gasped. My mother looked confused. "I never received one," she said. I nodded. I know. Then, I pointed across the ballroom, directly at Emily, because your favorite daughter threw them in the trash. The reaction was instant. A ripple of shocked voices spread through the room. My mother's face went pale. That's ridiculous, she snapped. Emily would never check the date. I interrupted. Now every eye in the ballroom was on us. The invitations were mailed the same week. Emily moved into my apartment to help with wedding planning. Emily stood up so fast her chair tipped over. You're being dramatic, she said, but her voice was shaking, and that's when I said the part that made the entire wedding explode. I know you threw them away, Emily. I paused, because this next sentence was the one she had prayed I would never say in public, because the security camera in my building caught you doing it. The silence that followed felt heavier than the chandeliers above us. 300 guests, and suddenly every single one of them was staring at my sister. Emily's face turned the color of the champagne in her glass. That's a lie, she said quickly, too quickly. My mother looked between us, confused. Patricia, stop this nonsense, she snapped. You're embarrassing yourself. But the room didn't feel like it belonged to my mother anymore. It felt like a courtroom, and everyone was waiting for the next piece of evidence. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply reached into my purse. Emily saw it instantly, and the fear in her eyes confirmed everything. Don't, she whispered, but it was too late. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table in front of me. You're right, Mom, I said calmly. Emily didn't think anyone would notice. The guests closest to me leaned forward, curiosity spreading like wildfire through the ballroom, because nothing captures attention like family secrets at a wedding. And honestly, I continued, I almost didn't. I tapped the screen once, but the building manager called me the next morning. Emily shook her head violently. Patricia, stop. They thought it was strange, I said. They said someone spent almost 10 minutes standing over the mailroom trash. A murmur rippled through the crowd. My mother's smile was gone now. What are you talking about? She demanded. So I turned the phone around and pressed play. The video was grainy security footage, black and white, timestamp, 11:42 p.m. Camera pointed directly at the mailroom garbage bin in my apartment building. At first, nothing happened. Then the door opened, and Emily walked in, even from across the ballroom. Everyone could recognize her, the white coat, the long hair, the diamond bracelet my mother had given her last Christmas. She looked around, left, right, making sure no one was watching. Then, she reached into the trash and started pulling out envelopes, white envelopes, dozens of them, each one printed with the same gold letters, Patricia Morgan and Daniel Carter request the honor of your presence. Gasps erupted across the room. Someone dropped a glass. My mother stared at the screen like she had stopped breathing. Emily grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. That's not what it looks like, she said weakly, but the video kept playing. One by one, my sister ripped the envelopes open, read the cards, then threw them back into the trash, like they were garbage. Like my wedding didn't matter. The video ended, and the silence that followed was terrifying. My mother slowly turned toward Emily. Tell me, she whispered. Tell me that isn't real. Emily's eyes darted around the ballroom, searching for an escape, but there wasn't one. 300 people had just seen the truth, and that's when Emily said the sentence that made everything even worse. She looked straight at me and laughed. You're welcome, Patricia. Emily's laugh echoed through the ballroom. Not nervous, not embarrassed, confident, like she had been waiting years to finally say it out loud. A wave of whispers swept across the 300 guests. My mother looked at her like she didn't recognize the daughter she had spent her whole life defending. Emily, she said slowly. What do you mean you're welcome? Emily rolled her eyes, the perfect bride mask finally cracking. Oh please, she said, brushing imaginary dust from her dress. Someone had to stop that disaster. Gasps exploded around the room. My mother's face turned pale. What disaster? Emily pointed at me like I was something unpleasant stuck to her shoe. That wedding. The room went completely silent again. You were going to marry Daniel Carter, she said with a laugh. A man who barely makes $40,000 a year. Some of the guests shifted uncomfortably, but Emily wasn't finished. You were going to embarrass this family, she continued. A backyard wedding? Cheap invitations? No real venue? She turned toward the crowd. My sister was about to humiliate all of us. My mother looked at me slowly. Patricia? That's not true, is it? But I didn't answer, because Emily already had. That's exactly what it was, Emily said. And I saved you from it. My hands tightened around the back of my chair. 8 months of silence. 8 months of pretending I didn't know the truth. But now the truth was standing in a white wedding dress, and she was proud of it. I threw the invitations away, Emily continued, because if no one received them, the wedding couldn't happen. She shrugged, and guess what? She spread her arms like a performer taking a bow. It worked. The guests started murmuring loudly now. Someone whispered, "That's insane." My mother looked like she might faint. You ruined your sister's wedding? She asked. Emily sighed dramatically. Oh, relax, Mom. Then she looked directly at me again. You should actually thank me. Her voice dropped into that familiar, cruel tone she used when we were kids. Because if you had married Daniel, she smiled, you would have found out the truth. Eventually, a strange chill ran through my chest, because suddenly I knew where this was going, and I realized something terrifying. Emily wasn't just proud of destroying my wedding. She thought she had saved me. My mother frowned. What truth? Emily turned toward the crowd again, and then she said the sentence that made the entire room explode with shock. Daniel was cheating on her. The words exploded across the ballroom like a gunshot. Guests gasped. Someone near the dance floor whispered, "Oh my God." My mother turned slowly toward me, her eyes wide with confusion. Patricia? Is that true? But I didn't answer. I just watched Emily, because I knew exactly what she was doing. Emily loved this moment. She loved being the one who revealed secrets, the one who controlled the narrative. She stepped forward like she was delivering the final act of a play. Yes, Mom, she said confidently. I found the messages months ago. She folded her arms. Daniel was seeing another woman. The room erupted into murmurs. A few guests shook their heads sympathetically toward me. Some even looked relieved, like the scandal had shifted away from Emily. My mother placed a hand over her mouth. Patricia, honey, why didn't you tell us? Emily tilted her head and smiled sweetly. Because she didn't know. My stomach tightened. This was the part she had planned, the part she thought would destroy me. Emily looked around the room, soaking up every pair of eyes watching her. I saw the texts on Daniel's phone, she said. I was protecting my sister. Protecting. That word hung in the air like poison. I threw the invitations away because if that wedding happened, she shrugged, it would have ended in divorce. Within a year, a few guests nodded slowly. The logic sounded convincing. Even my mother looked conflicted. Now, Emily was trying to protect you, she said, carefully. That's when I finally spoke. Daniel wasn't cheating. Emily laughed. Immediately. Oh please. Patricia. She pulled out her own phone. You want proof? She held the screen up dramatically. I took screenshots. Some guests leaned forward. Emily tapped the phone and turned it so people near her could see. Messages between Daniel and another woman. Flirty, personal, damaging. See? Emily said proudly. Saved you from a lifetime mistake. My mother sighed with relief. Oh, thank God. Then she looked at me like the problem had been solved. Patricia? Your sister was trying to help. That's when I smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a sad one. The kind of calm smile that makes people suddenly uncomfortable, because Emily had just made one very big mistake. She had shown everyone the screenshots, and now the entire ballroom believed her. I slowly picked up my phone again. You're right, Emily, I said quietly. You did find messages on Daniel's phone, Emily smirked. Finally. Then I continued, but you forgot one very important detail. The room went silent. Again, Emily's smile flickered. What detail? She asked. I looked straight at her, the woman he was texting. I paused, because the next sentence was the one she never expected me to say in front of 300 people. Was you. The words didn't just land, they detonated. For a full second, nobody breathed. 300 guests stared at Emily. Her confident smile disappeared instantly. What? She said, but her voice cracked. I stepped away from the table slowly, making sure everyone could hear me. You said you saw messages on Daniel's phone, I continued calmly. You said he was cheating. Emily swallowed. Yes. With another woman. I nodded. That part is true. The ballroom filled with uneasy murmurs. My mother looked completely lost. Patricia, what are you saying? I raised my phone again. You're right, Emily, I said softly. Daniel was texting someone. Then I turned the screen toward the nearest tables, and you're right. The messages were very real. Guests leaned closer. Curiosity is powerful, but scandal at a wedding? That's irresistible. The screen lit up with the same conversation Emily had shown, the same messages, the same flirtation, but this time, the contact name at the top of the screen was visible. Emily Carter. Gasps erupted across the ballroom. Someone actually shouted. No way. Emily's face turned ghost white. That's not, it is. I interrupted gently. I looked around the room slowly. You see, when Emily moved into my apartment to help plan my wedding, I paused. She also started spending a lot of time with Daniel. My mother shook her head violently. No, Emily would never, but the guests were already whispering, because now the puzzle pieces were falling into place. I opened another photo, and another, screenshots, hotel confirmations, late night messages, photos taken in elevators. Emily's breathing became shallow. Patricia? Stop. But I didn't, because for 8 months I had stayed silent, 8 months of pretending I didn't know. 8 months of letting everyone believe my wedding simply fell apart. I didn't cancel my wedding because Daniel cheated, I said quietly. I canceled it because I found out who he cheated with. Emily looked like she might collapse. My mother turned slowly toward her. Emily. Her voice trembled. Tell me that isn't true. Emily didn't answer. She just stared at the floor, and that silence told everyone everything. The whispers exploded now. Her own sister. At her wedding? Oh my God. My mother looked like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. You slept with him? She whispered. Emily suddenly snapped. Oh please. She shouted. Her eyes burned as she looked straight at me. You act like you're the victim. The ballroom froze again, because the anger in her voice was something no one expected from the perfect bride. Emily pointed at me. You were going to marry a man who loved me. The room erupted again. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, but Emily wasn't done. She laughed bitterly. You want the truth, Patricia? She leaned forward slightly. He chose me. Then she said the one sentence that made the entire wedding spiral into chaos. And if you hadn't ruined everything tonight. She grabbed the groom's hand beside her. Daniel would have been sitting right here next to me. The entire ballroom exploded into chaos. Guests were standing now, people whispering, pointing, some even pulling out their phones, because nothing spreads faster than a wedding scandal. My mother looked like someone had drained the life out of her. Emily? She whispered. Please tell me you didn't just say that. But Emily wasn't backing down anymore. The perfect bride mask was completely gone. She squeezed the groom's hand beside her. Why are we pretending? She snapped. It's already ruined. The groom Mark looked like he had just realized he was sitting in the middle of a disaster. Emily, maybe we should stay out of it, she snapped. Then she looked straight at me again. You want the truth so badly? She laughed bitterly. Fine. The room went silent again because even the band members were now staring. Emily stepped away from the head table. Her wedding dress dragged across the floor as she walked closer to me. You were always second best, Patricia, she said. My mother gasped, but Emily kept going. Daniel didn't fall for me because I tried. She shrugged. He fell for me because I'm the one everyone actually wants. A few guests exchanged uncomfortable looks. The cruelty in her voice was undeniable. Now, Emily crossed her arms. You were boring, safe, predictable. She tilted her head, and when Daniel met me, he realized what he was missing. My hands stayed steady, because I had heard all of this before. 8 months ago, the night everything collapsed. You think I stole him? Emily continued. But the truth? She smiled coldly. He came to me. Another wave of whispers rolled through the crowd. My mother suddenly shouted, "Enough!" Everyone froze. She looked at Emily like she was seeing a stranger. You destroyed your sister's wedding. Emily shrugged again. Oh please, Mom. Then she gestured toward the ballroom. Look around. Crystal chandeliers, luxury venue, designer dress. This is a real wedding. She pointed toward me. What she planned was a joke. That was the moment my mother slapped the table hard. The sound echoed through the ballroom. I raised you better than this, she said, shaking. Emily's expression hardened. No, she said quietly. You raised me to win, and suddenly, the entire room understood something. This wasn't just about Daniel. This was about a lifetime of competition, but Emily didn't know something yet, something that made this whole moment even more explosive. I slowly picked up my phone again. Emily, I said calmly, you're right about one thing. She smirked. Oh, finally admitting it. I nodded. Daniel did choose you. She smiled proudly, but then I finished the sentence. After I told him to. Her smile vanished instantly. The room fell silent again. Emily frowned. What are you talking about? I looked straight at her, because the truth she had been celebrating for 8 months was about to destroy her brand new marriage. You think you stole him, I said quietly, but the truth is. I paused, and then I said the sentence that made the groom beside her slowly stand up. Daniel and I set you up. For a moment, the entire ballroom stopped breathing. Emily stared at me like she had misheard. What? She said, not confident this time, not smug, just confused. Even the groom beside her, Mark, slowly pulled his hand away. What does that mean? He asked quietly. I didn't rush. Moments like this deserve silence, because silence makes the truth heavier. You said Daniel chose you. I continued calmly. Emily forced a laugh. Yeah, because he did, but the confidence in her voice was gone. So I nodded. He did. Then, I added the part she never imagined. After I asked him to, the room erupted into whispers again. My mother looked completely lost. Patricia? What are you saying? I turned slightly so everyone could hear. You see, 8 months ago, I found the messages between Emily and Daniel. Emily crossed her arms. Exactly. So you know he wanted me. I shook my head slowly. No, then I held up my phone. Again, I knew she wanted him. Emily's jaw tightened. That's ridiculous. But I ignored her. Emily has always wanted what I have. I said, when we were kids, it was my friends. When we were teenagers, it was my clothes. And when I got engaged, I looked directly at her. It became my fiancé. The guests were completely silent now, because suddenly this didn't feel like gossip anymore. Tea felt like a long game finally ending. So I tested something. I said. Emily scoffed. Oh please, but she wasn't smiling anymore. I asked Daniel to flirt back. I continued, to see how far you would take it. Emily's eyes widened. You were lying. I opened another message thread on my phone. Different screenshots, different conversation between me and Daniel. Instructions, time, stamps, proof. Gasps echoed through the ballroom again, because suddenly the story had flipped. Emily's Breathing became shallow. No, she whispered, but I wasn't finished. At first, I said calmly. Daniel thought it was a terrible idea. I looked around the room. He said no one would betray their own sister like that. Then I looked back at Emily, but you proved him wrong. Emily's hands were shaking. Now, you manipulated everything, she said, her voice rising. You trapped me. I tilted my head slightly. No, then. I delivered the line that made several guests actually laugh in disbelief. I simply gave you the opportunity. The groom beside her suddenly stepped away, slowly, carefully, like he was realizing he had married into something dangerous. Emily noticed. Mark, don't be stupid, she snapped. But Mark looked at me instead. Is this true? He asked quietly. I nodded once. Yes. Then I added the final piece. And Daniel recorded every conversation he had with Emily. The color drained from Emily's face, because now she understood. This wasn't just humiliation. This was evidence. I looked around the ballroom filled with 300 shocked guests, then back at my sister. You didn't just try to steal my fiancé. I paused, because the next sentence would end this wedding completely. You also committed fraud using his company credit card. Emily froze, her lips parted slowly, because now she remembered something she thought no one would ever connect, and that's when police sirens became faintly audible outside the ballroom.